They say fences make good neighbors. But what happens when your neighbors think they own everything beyond the fence? I moved to Cedar Lake for peace, for space, quiet mornings, and that little slice of waterfront I could finally call my own. No one told me that behind the manicured lawns and smiling faces lurked a power-hungry HOA board ready to trample every boundary, legal and personal. It all started with a gate, a simple padlock meant to protect my privacy. But to them, it was a declaration of war. I didn't know then that the fight for my backyard would uncover corruption, lies, and the kind of neighborhood secrets people usually pay to keep buried. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Not for a gate, not for anything. I moved to Sequoia Springs for peace. That's all I wanted. After 2 decades of chasing breaking news across war zones and political scandal pits, I thought I'd earned it. My name is Samantha Cruz, former investigative journalist, now ghostwriter and semi-retired coffee addict. The house I bought sat quietly on the edge of Cedar Lake, bordered by pine trees and solitude. It had a small dock, a stone path that led through my backyard, and most importantly, a gate. A gate that I had installed myself. The property listing had made it clear this land was private. The old footpath winding along the lake's edge, also private, though clearly used by residents who'd wandered through over the years like it was a public park. When I moved in, I didn't mind. A few polite hellos, a neighbor with a stroller, the occasional jogger. I even thought it was kind of charming. But charm wears thin quickly when it's followed by crushed beer cans in your hydrangeas, cigarette butts on your dock, and strangers letting their dogs poop 2 feet from your hammock. So I did what any rational homeowner would do. I posted no trespassing signs, gave it 6 months, and then installed a simple iron gate with a padlock, precisely along my legal property line. The gate wasn't ornamental. It was a boundary. I didn't expect fanfare. I didn't expect applause. But I definitely didn't expect what showed up on my doorstep 2 days later. Ding dong. I peeked through the peephole and sighed. There she was, Jennifer Wilson. She was the president of the Sequoia Springs Homeowners Association, and possibly the most precisely groomed human being I'd ever encountered. Not a single blonde curl out of place. Pearls, red blazer, clipboard, and that look people save for when they're about to deliver terrible news, but expect you to thank them anyway. "Good afternoon," she said the moment I opened the door, her smile more polished than kind. "We have a bit of an issue." "Hello to you too," I replied, already feeling the start of a headache. "What's the problem?" She tilted her head, flipping through her clipboard with theatrical efficiency. "At last night's emergency board meeting, we discussed your recent installation, the gate." I waited. "You've blocked access to the lake path," she continued, tone flat like it was self-evident. "That trail's been used by the community for decades. You're disrupting that access." "Jennifer," I said, keeping my voice level, "the path is on my land. I confirmed with the county before I moved in. It's private property." Her smile stiffened. "Well, that's the thing. We believe the HOA's long-standing use establishes community precedent. Some would say easement. Regardless, the board voted unanimously. You need to provide us with a key to that gate." I blinked. "You want a key to my private gate?" "To restore access," she nodded. "People are already complaining about having to walk an extra 10 minutes around the road to reach the lake. It's causing dissatisfaction." Dissatisfaction. The word clung to her like perfume. I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but no. I consulted my lawyer. There's no easement recorded on the deed. And I've had no trespassing signs posted for 6 months, which legally nullifies any claim of implied access." Jennifer's eyes narrowed slightly. She took a step closer. "I'm not sure you understand the dynamics here, Ms. Cruz," she said. "The HOA has ways of encouraging compliance. Last year, a homeowner challenged us on his backyard fence. He ended up with $12,000 in fines and a lien on his home. He moved 2 months later." I felt a chill. "Is that a threat?" She smiled, but her eyes stayed cold. No, just a reminder that life is easier when we all cooperate. Well, I said, stepping back, if the HOA would like to discuss this further, you're welcome to contact my attorney. I handed her Mark's card and gently closed the door. Through the window, I watched her storm off, already dialing her phone. I didn't know it yet, but that moment was the first domino. And everything after? That was the fall. That night, I barely slept. Around 11:32 p.m., my phone buzzed. Security alert. Motion detected, backyard gate. I tapped the feed open, heart racing. 3 figures, one in a red windbreaker. A familiar flash of pearls in the dark. Jennifer. She wasn't alone. Robert Davis, the HOA's treasurer, and Michael Thompson, the maintenance director, were with her. Robert held something metallic. A bolt cutter. I hit record. Then I dialed 911. This is Samantha Cruz. I have people attempting to break into my property right now. I have live footage from my security camera. By the time Officer Marcus Fields arrived, the trio was gone. But my padlock wasn't. Deep gashes marked where it had nearly been cut through. I showed the footage. Marcus whistled low. That's criminal trespass and attempted vandalism. Want to file a report? Yes, I said. And I wanted on the record that this was premeditated. While he documented everything, headlights flicked down my driveway. A silver Lexus. Jennifer stepped out like she was late to brunch, Robert on her heels. Officer, she chirped, all sugar. We were just checking on community property. There was concern the gate was faulty and, this is private land, Marcus cut her off. You're on camera trying to destroy a lock on private property. Jennifer's face hardened. This is an HOA matter. We have bylaws. Ma'am, Marcus said calmly. Bylaws don't override state law. You'd be wise to speak to your legal team before you do something that qualifies as felony trespass. They left without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. The next morning, 5 violation notices landed in my inbox from the HOA. Fence height, mailbox color, unapproved flower bed, excessive hose use, and disruptive modifications to public-facing structures. Each fine, $100 per day. That's when I realized this wasn't about a gate, it was about control, and they'd just picked a fight with the wrong woman. By the time the HOA's 3rd notice arrived, this one accusing me of violating Lawn Edge regulations, I had already called my lawyer twice, installed a 2nd set of security cameras, and updated my cloud storage plan. The Sequoia Springs HOA had declared war, not with fire and brimstone, but with paper cuts, petty fines, fabricated violations, one after the next. And the worst part? The neighborhood began to turn. That weekend I walked out to get my mail and caught Mrs. Baker, who lived 2 doors down, quickly pulling her curtains shut. The week before, she had waved and complimented my rose bushes. Now, she wouldn't meet my eyes. On next door, the whispers had begun. Can't believe someone would block a lake path. Selfish. Not a team player. HOA said she's breaking code. Why buy here if you don't want to follow the rules? I couldn't respond without feeding the fire. Every post was designed to bait me. Jennifer and her board knew exactly how to manipulate the narrative. Paint me as the outsider, the troublemaker, the villain of a community fairy tale. What they didn't expect? I wasn't alone. It started with Grace. She showed up at my door one morning with a tray of lemon muffins and a stack of manila folders. I'm old, not blind, she said with a wry smile. I've been bullied by that woman for years. Time someone stood up to her. Inside the folders were 5 years' worth of newsletters, budget summaries, and hand-annotated meeting minutes. She never publishes full financials, Grace muttered, as I flipped through. Always just a one-page overview with no receipts. But look here. See the lake path maintenance fee line item? I stared at the entry. $17,300 per year. For what maintenance? I asked. It's a dirt trail with no lighting, no signage, no landscaping. Grace nodded. Exactly. And guess what? Last year it jumped to $45,000. That was my moment of clarity. This wasn't just about a gate. It wasn't even about trespassing. This was embezzlement, plain and simple. Grace wasn't the only one with a story. Over the next few days, I heard from others. Tom Nguyen, whose fence permit was denied until he hired Jennifer's cousin's contracting firm. Mrs. Espinoza, who paid $600 in compliance fees after she painted her shutters cream instead of beige. By Ravi and Priya, a young couple fined for having non-compliant patio furniture, just weeks after Jennifer's friend bid on their property, and they declined the offer. The board wasn't enforcing rules. They were weaponizing them. Meanwhile, I collected my own receipts. Using the county GIS mapping service, I printed out high-resolution surveys proving my gate, fence, and the so-called community path were all squarely within my property line. My lawyer, Mark, filed a formal cease and desist letter against the HOA and requested a complete financial disclosure under California Civil Code, Proce 200, which mandates that HOA members have the right to inspect financial records within 30 days of request. Jennifer responded with a smugly worded email refusing access, citing pending internal audit and confidentiality concerns. It was a legal bluff, and a stupid one. Mark filed a formal complaint with the county. Meanwhile, I sent a registered letter to the HOA demanding a hearing before any further fines could be assessed. But the board didn't back down. They escalated. On Thursday, a contractor showed up at my front door with a clipboard. "Here to inspect your hedges," he said, "per the board's directive." I blinked. "You don't have permission to enter my property." He looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I was told this was community space." I pulled out my printed deed and pointed at the line. Lot 17 extends to the water line. Private lakefront access. No shared easement. He scratched the back of his neck. "They're paying me either way, but yeah, this is shady." Before he left, he handed me a printed map the HOA had distributed to vendors. On it, my backyard had been shaded in light green, labeled Community Access Point Planned Expansion. They were planning to annex my land. Mark and I met that night. "They're setting you up," he said, rifling through Grace's documents. "They want to create a paper trail to justify putting a lien on your property. It won't hold up in court, but it'll scare a lot of people into settling." "They picked the wrong one this time," I said, the exhaustion in my voice replaced by something sharper. "Resolve." Mark nodded. "Good, because we're going to need everything. Every email, every fine, every petty violation. This is no longer a gate dispute. It's a systemic abuse of power." We agreed to move forward with a civil claim, and Mark also filed a formal complaint with the California Department of Consumer Affairs, which oversees HOA practices statewide. But I knew this was going to get worse before it got better. Jennifer didn't know it yet, but she'd just turned a retired journalist into her worst nightmare, a well-resourced homeowner with a paper trail. And I was just getting started. 2 days after Mark filed the financial access request, I received a letter, not from the HOA, but from the City Planning Office. Notification of zoning review. Pending application. Easement reassessment on Parcel 17. I froze. Parcel 17 was my property. According to the letter, the HOA had submitted a proposal to reclassify part of my lakefront yard as a public easement based on historic community access and public benefit. I stared at the page in disbelief. They were going to the city now, trying to rewrite property lines. I called Mark immediately. "It's retaliation," he said. "They're escalating because they know we're close to uncovering something." My stomach turned. Can they actually do this? Not legally, but if they can get enough signatures, they can convince the city to hold a hearing. And if no one challenges them, they might get away with it. That same afternoon, Jennifer posted an urgent notice to the community forum. In light of ongoing legal distractions caused by a particular homeowner, The board has voted to fast-track lake access protections for all residents. This may require certain adjustments to property lines in the interest of fairness and historical use. Comments poured in. Dozens of residents, many misinformed, began attacking me openly. She moved in last year and now thinks she owns the lake? Just open the gate and stop causing drama. HOA's just trying to do what's right for everyone. I felt sick. The narrative had flipped. I was no longer the victim of overreach. I was the villain threatening community tradition. Even the neighbors who'd once brought me cookies now crossed the street to avoid me, but then I got a message that changed everything. It came from a burner email account. No name, just one sentence. You're not the first. Look into Lakeside Reserve, HOA District 6. I stared at it, confused. So I did. It took 2 hours of digging, but I found a local news article from 2019. Board members charged in HOA embezzlement scheme. The location, Lakeside Reserve, HOA District 6. One of the names listed under witnesses interviewed? Jennifer Wilson. I blinked. The article explained that the Lakeside Reserve HOA had been caught inflating landscaping contracts, directing the money to a shell company, then siphoning funds to individual board members. No charges were filed against Jennifer, but she had been treasurer at the time. My hands trembled as I printed the article. I called Grace. "Check this out," I said, and read the headline aloud. There was a pause on the other end, then, my God, I remember that scandal. Everyone thought it was overblown. Well, I said, it's back, and this time she's in charge. Later that evening, I was sitting at my desk when a loud bang echoed from the front of my house. I ran to the window. Someone had smashed my mailbox, and they'd left a handwritten note scrawled in red marker, "We don't want you here." My heart thudded in my chest. This wasn't just legal warfare anymore, it was personal. I called the police again. Officer Reynolds showed up. He took the report, shook his head, and looked me square in the eye. "Do you have a backup location to stay, just in case?" I hesitated. "You think it'll get worse?" He nodded. "You're pushing against a system people have accepted for years. It's making them uncomfortable. People don't like change. Or whistleblowers." After he left, I walked through my house, locking every door and window. Outside, porch lights flickered across the cul-de-sac. The neighborhood I'd once dreamed of was now a battlefield. I spent that night awake at my dining table, documents spread around me like a fortress. The next morning, Thomas showed up. He was the accountant neighbor, quiet, kind, always polite. He stood awkwardly on my porch, holding a box. "I've been reviewing the financials Grace saved," he said. "She let me scan everything." He set the box down. "And I think there's something here. Multiple vendors listed under different names. Same IN number. Same mailing address, a P.O. box in town." I opened the file he handed me. Lakeside Community Landscaping, Green Haven Services, and MLG Property Care. Same tax ID, different invoices, same handwriting. "This is fraud," I whispered. Thomas nodded. "Grace and I think they've laundered over $140,000 through fake maintenance fees in the past 5 years. "And nobody noticed?" I asked. "No one questions anything," he replied quietly. "Until now." At that moment, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about a padlocked gate or even about me anymore. This was about a neighborhood silenced by intimidation, an HOA that had become a personal kingdom. And now, we had evidence. But Jennifer wasn't going to let us take her crown without a fight. Because 2 hours later, the lien letter arrived. Stamped in bold red letters, total due, 15 sevens in accrued violations. Failure to remit payment will result in foreclosure proceedings. I stood there frozen, the paper trembling in my hand. They were coming for my home, but they were about to learn the hard way. I wasn't backing down. The lien notice sat on my kitchen table like a bomb. $15,700 in fines. Made-up violations, retroactively documented. It was retaliation. Pure, calculated, merciless. But now they had gone too far. They weren't just trying to intimidate me, they were trying to take my home. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Grace. Town hall meeting tomorrow. They're pushing the vote to authorize foreclosure. It's happening at 6 p.m. I called Mark, my attorney. They're accelerating. Illegally, he said. You're protected under due process, but you'll need to make noise. Public noise. Meaning? Go public. Bring the community in. If they realize they've been manipulated, they'll turn. I was silent for a moment. I hated being the center of attention. I didn't want to become a symbol. But then I remembered Grace's birdbath fine. Thomas working extra shifts to pay his dues. Elderly neighbors afraid to speak up. I nodded. Okay, I said. Let's give them the truth. That afternoon, I drafted a letter to every homeowner in Maple Springs. Subject: what the HOA doesn't want you to know. Dear neighbors, this week, I received a foreclosure notice over $15,700 in alleged violations, none of which were ever delivered before this month. In response, I've filed a legal claim and criminal complaints, and I now have evidence of financial fraud conducted by current HOA board members. Over $140,000 of your dues were routed through fake vendor accounts controlled by board members. We also discovered Jennifer Wilson's involvement in a previous embezzlement scandal at Lakeside Reserve HOA in 2019. I have attached the documents. See for yourself. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. they'll try to vote to take my home. I'll be there. I hope you'll come too. Sincerely, a homeowner who just wanted peace. I printed 100 copies, walked the entire neighborhood, and dropped them in every mailbox with a trembling hand. I didn't sleep that night. The community hall was packed. More residents than I had ever seen. People standing against the back wall, others whispering, murmuring, clutching my letter. Jennifer stood at the front of the room, flanked by Robert and Diane. She wore a sleek black suit and her usual string of pearls. Her expression calm, but her eyes told a different story. They were narrow, cold, angry. Before we begin, she said into the mic, let's remember why we're here. One homeowner has attempted to disrupt our community's order by refusing access to a historic path. It's not historic. A voice rang out. Everyone turned. It was Thomas, standing up from his folding chair. It's her private property. Always has been. And we have the deeds to prove it. Murmurs again. Jennifer stiffened. I'm sorry, but this is a private matter. No, Grace interrupted, rising slowly. It's public now. And I have questions about the $45,000 we paid for path maintenance last year. Because not a single weed was pulled. People started clapping. Jennifer slammed her gavel. You people are being misled by conspiracy and paranoia. This homeowner is delinquent, a proven violator. Mark stepped forward. My client is up to date on all dues. Every alleged violation was issued after she filed police reports for vandalism, committed by these very board members. That's called retaliation, and it's illegal. More gasps, more whispers. Then the moment that changed everything. Mark pulled out a stack of printed invoices. These are records of HOA payments to companies that don't exist. Shell vendors. No staff, no addresses. We traced the payments. They ended in Jennifer Wilson's personal bank account. Jennifer's face turned ashen. Those records were obtained illegally, she snapped. No, Mark said. They were part of discovery once the lawsuit was filed. A woman in the front row stood. You told us we couldn't see the financials because of privacy concerns. You lied to us. I trusted you, said another. You raised our dues to cover this, a father shouted. Jennifer's mask cracked. She turned to Robert and Diane, but they had already stepped away. That night, I sat on my porch, exhausted. The meeting had ended in chaos. The foreclosure vote was canceled. The board was suspended. The city announced a formal investigation. I took a deep breath, looking out over the lake. For the first time in weeks, I felt the tiniest glimmer of peace. But I knew this wasn't over. Because corruption doesn't go quietly. And Jennifer Wilson? She still had cards left to play. For a few days, it felt like things might finally be calming down. The community had rallied. The board was suspended. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now waved. Some even stopped to apologize. But it didn't last. That Friday, I came home from work to find a notice stapled to my front door. It was written in bold red letters. Urgent HOA alert. Pending legal action has uncovered serious safety hazards and unpermitted structures on your property. Your gate, fencing, cameras, and pathway must be removed within 72 hours to comply with emergency code enforcement. Beneath that was a seal, not the HOA's. It was from the County Department of Zoning. My stomach dropped. I called Mark, my lawyer. "This wasn't from the HOA," I said. "They got the county involved." Mark sounded tense. "Let me check something. Hold tight." 30 minutes later, he called back, furious. This was filed using a fraudulent complaint. Someone submitted altered property maps claiming your gate was on community-owned easement land. I blinked. But we already proved it wasn't. They're trying to reset the narrative. But this isn't HOA anymore. This came from inside the zoning office. That's when I remembered what Jennifer said weeks ago. My husband plays golf with the mayor. I suddenly understood. This wasn't just about a gate anymore. Jennifer still had friends in high places. At 10:15 a.m., 2 county officials showed up in reflective vests, clipboard in hand. They refused to enter without a warrant. But they took photos, measured distances, jotted notes. One of them glanced at me and said, "This is above our pay grade." By noon, my gate was officially marked for removal. The deadline, 72 hours. Mark filed an emergency injunction, but the hearing wouldn't happen until Tuesday, a full 24 hours after the deadline expired. "I'm not taking it down," I told him. He hesitated. "If they come with enforcement, they might bring a crew to forcibly remove it." Let them try, I thought. But deep down, I was scared. Not for myself, but for the principle. This wasn't about a structure anymore. This was about being silenced, about being erased. Grace came by around 6:00 p.m. Her eyes worried. "They've started the whisper campaign again," she said softly. "Jennifer's telling people you forged the surveys, that you doctored the security footage, that you're trying to privatize the lake for profit." I laughed bitterly. "Is anyone buying it?" She sighed. "Some are, but not everyone, not this time." Thomas joined us a few minutes later. Then another neighbor, and another. Soon a small group of us sat on my front lawn. They brought drinks, folding chairs, and stories. One man revealed his fence had been torn down by the HOA without warning last year. A woman spoke about her mother being fined for keeping a clothesline. One by one, they shared. For the first time, the damage the HOA had caused wasn't just mine. It was ours. A flatbed truck pulled into the neighborhood. 2 county code enforcement vehicles followed. 4 workers in hard hats stepped out, hauling tools and bolt cutters. At the front of the convoy, Jennifer's silver SUV. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I stood at my gate, arms crossed. One of the county officers approached. "Ma'am, we have an order to remove the unpermitted structure." "That order is under appeal," I replied calmly. "You don't have judicial clearance to execute it until after the hearing." He glanced over his paperwork, then turned to Jennifer. She walked up with a smug grin. "Still clinging to your little fence?" she said. I smiled faintly. "No, I'm clinging to the law." From behind me, the sound of voices grew louder. I turned to see dozens of neighbors gathering on my lawn. Grace, Thomas, families, parents with kids, retirees, all of them. They stood between the gate and the workers. One woman called out, "This is harassment." Another, "You have no legal authority." Jennifer's smile faltered. The county official picked up his radio. "We're not proceeding without legal review," he muttered. Jennifer looked ready to scream. Then came the best part. A black, unmarked SUV pulled up and parked across the street. The door opened, and out stepped Detective Wilson. "Jennifer Wilson," he said calmly, "we have more questions about the financial activity between your HOA board and zoning officials." Her expression collapsed. As he walked toward her, I saw her step back, eyes wide, and just like that, she ran out of moves. That night, Grace brought me a pie. "You're becoming a local legend," she said with a wink. I shook my head. "I didn't want to be, I just wanted to keep my gate." "Well," she said, settling into the porch swing, "you've done more than that." I looked out across the lake. The gate was still standing. But more importantly, so were we, the community, the truth, the line that no one should ever cross again. It was a bright Tuesday morning when the gate, the one they tried so hard to tear down, became the symbol of everything they couldn't. Not control, not bully, not silence. The court hearing was set for 10 a.m. sharp. I wore my best Navy suit, clutching the folder filled with every document, every photo, every time-stamped security footage. Mark, my lawyer, walked beside me with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what the next 2 hours would do. When we entered the courtroom, it was already half full. Grace sat near the front, notebook in hand. Thomas gave me a quick thumbs up. The Maple Springs board members, what was left of them, sat on the opposite side. Jennifer was there. Her hair pulled tight, jaw locked. Her expression wasn't smug this time. It was scared. The judge, a stern woman with years etched into her voice, entered and took her seat. "All rise." The gavel hit the bench once, and just like that, the final chapter began. Mark started by laying out everything. The deed showing the lake path belonged to me. The surveys from county records confirming no public easement existed. The video footage of HOA board members breaking the gate lock. The emails and violation notices issued within hours of the confrontation. A clear pattern of retaliation. But then came the twist no one saw coming. Mark pulled up a slide titled, "Unauthorized Use of Community Funds." 2017 to 2024, line after line, showed fund transfers from the HOA's account to shell vendors, landscaping services billed, but never rendered. Lake path maintenance charges, for a path they didn't legally control, $120,000 unaccounted for. A quiet gasp rippled through the courtroom. Jennifer's attorney scrambled to object, but the judge waved him off. "This is relevant," she said flatly. When Grace took the stand, her voice trembled for only a moment before finding its rhythm. "I was afraid of them for years, but when they tried to destroy someone's property, I realized silence wouldn't protect any of us anymore." Thomas followed. So did 3 other neighbors. They spoke of lies, of fines issued without cause, of HOA meetings changed last minute to avoid quorum, of a community ruled by intimidation, not governance. After 2 hours, the judge didn't deliberate long. "I've seen enough," she said, folding her glasses. "To the plaintiff, I rule fully in your favor. The property in question is private, legally and factually. The HOA board exceeded their authority and committed acts that, in some cases, border on criminal." She turned to Jennifer. "Based on submitted evidence and ongoing investigation, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review of potential fraud and conspiracy charges." Jennifer's face turned pale. Her lawyer didn't even argue. As the courtroom adjourned, applause broke out. Not loud, not theatrical, just quiet clapping. The kind that says, "We see you. We're with you." Weeks passed. Jennifer was removed from the board, her resignation public and humiliating. 3 more board members stepped down voluntarily. A temporary committee, led by Grace and Thomas, took over operations. They suspended all fines issued in the last 6 months, pending review. They opened the books. They invited every homeowner, even the quiet ones, to be heard. The community center became more than just a meeting place. It became a space for rebuilding. On a quiet Friday evening, I stood at my gate looking out over Cedar Lake. The path was still there, peaceful, untouched, mine. But the real victory? It wasn't that the gate stayed locked. It was that we unlocked something far more important, a community, the truth, and the courage to say no, when someone in power says, "Because I said so." Grace joined me, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "You know," she said, "I used to hate that gate." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" She smiled. "Yeah. Thought it was cold, unwelcoming." She took a sip. "But now? I see it differently." I waited. "It's not a wall," she said. "It's a line in the sand. And thanks to you, we all remembered how to draw one."